Hello guys, it's your boy the ToxicBigFoot back at it again with another video for you guys, and today we're going to be talking about the long finally awaited release of Doomfist, who unfortunately is not released by Terry Crews. Sad times guys, I know. Anyway, let's not get too bummed out over that fact because this new hero is pretty epic with all things considered, so let's jump straight into it, and without further ado we're going to talk about Doomfist's primary fire. So Doomfist's primary fire is called the hand cannon, which has an ammo capacity of 4 shots or bullets, whichever you prefer to call it. It is a short range weapon with a slight spread like Roadhog, although the damage isn't too great if you're doing normal body shots on an enemy at a longer range. However, it does automatically reload each of its shots one by one after a short delay. To use this effectively, you will need to be in close to the enemy to use the bulk of its damage, because it doesn't have a lot of range. Again, this is similar to Roadhog's weapon. It damages at a rate of 11 per pellet, and you get 6 pellets per shot, which is 66 damage per bullet if it's a direct headshot, which means this is a total damage of 264 for all 4 bullets if you directly headshot an enemy, which can be extremely lethal in the right situation, especially considering you are able to get damage boosts from Mercy, Orissa's ultimate, or an Ana's nano boost. With the hand cannon, you can easily tear through defences whilst using your other abilities simultaneously to this. The reload time per bullet is 0.7 seconds and there is no damage fall off. Doomfist's alternate fire, or second weapon as some people would like to call it, is called the Rocket Punch. What this does is basically launches Doomfist forward, knocking back a lot of enemies in his path regardless whether they have a shield in place. For example, Reinhardt, Orissa, Winston, those kind of characters. In my opinion personally, this attack will become extremely useful and handy when trying to eliminate a certain amount of enemies within your enemy's team due to having walls throughout the map, and also having a May wall that will be able to form behind enemies, which means that you will be able to charge at enemies much like Reinhardt does with his Reinhardt charge. Thus, you will be able to do more damage against an enemy if you hit them against the wall. The longer you charge up this ability with Doomfist, the further he will launch himself, and when he does, you are extremely dangerous to the enemy because you can cover a lot of travelling distances almost instantly. Using this ability will become extremely useful when contesting a point, a payload, or even capturing a flag, and especially when you can try and get away from an enemy. This attack not only has the ability to head into a fight and become extremely disruptive by clearing off opponents by knocking them away or into a wall, but also finishing them off. What makes this attack great is that it can be used evasively as well, by using it to escape from a certain area to regroup with your team, or even find a nearby health pack when you're being overrun by the enemy team. The damage effect for the Rocket Punch is 49 to 100 on hit, and it deals with an extra 50 to 150 if your target gets knocked into a wall or into a May wall. This attack will become extremely useful in tearing through shields placed by Winston, Reinhardt or Orissa, and ultimately splitting off enemies when paired with May to completely obliterate enemies by charging into them. The cooldown for this secondary weapon, as some people would call it, is 4 seconds. Now let's move on to ability number 1, the Seismic Slam. Doomfist's first ability is pretty cool, and an epic one I might add, because he is able to jump into the air and punch the ground with his gauntlet, which damages the enemy nearby and launches them into a short distance in the air. Kinda like Reinhardt's Hammer Down, except that this ability knocks nearby enemies that are affected by the Seismic Slam towards himself, rather than slightly away or directly in place like Reinhardt's ultimate does. This ability can become extremely useful as it can be paired with short charges of his Rocket Punch, or even finishing off the enemies with his primary weapon, the hand cannon. The Seismic Slam deals a total of 45 damage and has a cooldown of 7 seconds. This becomes extremely useful due to having his Rocket Punch ability, which you can try and charge into them with that brief moment whilst they are stunned, and also finishing off the enemies using your hand cannon. This moves us on to our second ability. Ability number 2, the Rising Uppercut. Doomfist's Rising Uppercut ability is his most primary source of mobility due to his default speed being neutral and practically the same as the rest of the cast aside from a several few. When Doomfist jumps straight into the air, he can uppercut enemies or punch the enemy, which deals a pretty neat amount of damage, as well as knocking the enemy straight up into the air with him. This ability will be fundamentally useful for people looking to main Doomfist, as you can travel to higher grounds with this ability, and with this he can either jump back down to where he was with his Seismic Slam, or he can use it to escape enemy fire and regroup with his team, as well as using this ability to perform multiple combos, using this one either as a starter or as a finisher. For example, using Doomfist's Uppercut, then finishing off with a Seismic Slam, and then following it up with a hand cannon is just one of the many ways you can finish off an enemy. When using this ability, you deal a total of 50 damage when you directly hit an enemy into the air. and it then goes into a 7 seconds of cooldown time, which is pretty useful considering some of his other abilities charge down much less. Doomfist's passive ability. This ability is probably one of my personal favourites, and I think you folks watching will probably understand why. When using Doomfist, and when he deals any sort of damage with one of his other abilities apart from his hand cannon, he gains temporary shields. This will help turn the tide in his favour in a lot of fights if you can manage to control the cooldowns well. Doomfist's starting health is 250 points, but can easily get his overall health pool well up to 400 when he deals damage with his abilities, especially considering he is able to stack multiple combos with his abilities, which also charges up his ultimate. His passive ability gains you an extra 30 plus barrier per enemy hit with any one of 3 abilities excluding his hand cannon, but it also gives you an additional 75 plus barriers per enemy hit with an ultimate ability. The maximum you can gain using this passive ability is 400, which is pretty darn impressive because his base health is only 250. With that being said, for an offensive character, this is pretty fundamental and extremely useful because this health is on par with Zarya's and it is only 100 less than Reinhardt's, which is one of the most powerful tanks in the game. The duration of this ability is a 1 second delay, but you also lose out on a -3 barriers per second. To wrap up the talk of his abilities, Doomfist's ultimate ability is called the Meteor Strike, and it's quite possibly one of the coolest ultimate abilities in the game. Doomfist launches himself sky high in the air out of sight, leaving a sort of big circular target on the ground below. Doomfist can then go on to moving the target to aim at enemies within the target area, and after you trigger this, a short delay will happen as he falls to the ground, dealing massive amounts of energy when the enemies are closer to the centre of Doomfist's target. The enemy can indeed see this target, but so can your teammates, which is a massive bonus because you can combine this ultimate ability with many other ultimates throughout the roster of characters available to choose from. Doomfist's Meteor Strike deals a whopping total of 300 damage at the centre of the target, which drops off on the edges, and it has a total radius of 7 meters, which is absolutely astonishing considering a nano boost Doomfist with a Zarya ult can wipe out an entire team with one Meteor Strike, including the fact that even if you didn't kill the opposing team, you still have multiple other abilities to choose from, including the additional barriers added to your health from your recent Meteor Strike to finish off the enemies with. The total charge required for this strike is 1500 points. I think that's all for today's episode, as I just wanted to cover some of the abilities that Doomfist has, and I think you guys should thoroughly enjoy using Doomfist in the PTR before we approach seeing him live in quick play, arcade and competitive matches. This new character will definitely be a game changer, and personally I can't wait. In the next episode I'm going to talk about some of the pros and cons for Doomfist and what you guys can potentially combine multiple combos with other characters, or what is useful to counter Doomfist when being faced against him. That's all for today, so thank you very much for watching guys, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Stay tuned and I'll see all you dudes in the next one. Take care now guys, bye bye bye.
Yeah. Baby girl, you're so damn fine, though. Wanna know if I can hit it from behind, though. I'm sipping on you like some fine wine, though. When it's over, I press rewind, though. Talking bands, I got it. Benjamins in my pocket. I traded my truth for some robins, and he's playing back.